everyone. I'm Dr. Adriana Popescu here with you with another episode of Triumphing Over Trauma, our inspirational educational video series. And I'm really excited to have with me today Stacey Fitzgerald. She is a trauma-informed guide who helps people feel safe in their bodies again so they can reclaim trust, choice, and aliveness. Her work emerged from lived experience, including a near-death horse accident, relational betrayal, disordered eating, and years inside dogmatic religious systems, and is one grounded in the understanding that people aren't broken, they're functioning exactly as they were designed. Learning to listen to our bodies and befriending our nervous system is foundational. Stacey uses somatic breath work, her original songs, and decades of embodied leadership with horses, where she's often known as the horse listener, creating relational spaces where healing unfolds naturally. With deep spiritual literacy, she gently bridges psychology and spirituality, response ability, and freedom, body and soul, offering guidance that is invitational, non-coercive, and rooted in safety rather than control. Welcome, Stacey.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So happy to have you. Now, you've really become a trauma expert, shaped very much by your own lived experience. So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about some of the things you've been through.
Well, I'll share from this perspective of when it re-emerged for me because my trauma was scattered throughout life. So, kind of the complex PTSD. And about 6 years ago now, that resurfaced for me. And I started having physical symptoms, panic attacks, all the stuff. And I thought, what is wrong with me? And that's when I sat with it, and all of these stories started to replay that you mentioned. My near death horse accident, I was in a 20-year marriage where there was betrayal. I looked at my own parents, my upbringing, my childhood, their divorce when I was 4, my eating disorder throughout decades of my life, and I started to put the pieces together. So it was multifaceted, betrayal trauma, actual accident, and all the other pieces that fold in. And that's how it really surfaced for me. And that's when I dug into what is this thing happening in my body.
hmm Well, and that's such a key thing. We talk about this a lot on this series and as well as my podcast that trauma lives in our bodies. It's not just
Yeah.
something psychological you go through, it's physiological. So I know that one of the key things for you in your healing process was to do somatic work. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, well, that even came a little bit later because I'm like a cognitive bypass person. I want to learn, learn, learn. So I jumped into that, which was part of why my trauma had stayed underground for so long, is I thought it was over. I dealt with it up here. I didn't deal with the body. So interestingly enough, when it resurfaced, that's where I went first too, was the intellect.
Yeah.
However, that information started to help me because what I started learning was that, just like you said, trauma's in my body, this somatic part. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've been bypassing, I've been processing without regulating. I looked at my music that I've been writing and I thought, I am trying to tell myself a message in my own songs about what I need. And I started to listen. So it was
Mm,
through this part, the brain, the thinking, the studying, the books, the podcasts, piles and piles, because I wanted to get better. And then I started to see the somatic work and started to bring in the actual practices. And that's when it shifted and all the intellectual work made sense because I
mm.
now had the ground, like a garden that was tilled for all those great seeds to go into.
hmm Now, did you work with any practitioners as part of your healing process, or were you doing this work on your own?
Primarily a DIYer. So for all
Wow.
those people out there that say I don't have access, I didn't have insurance at the time. It was like, what am I going to do? I had periods of time in my past that I had worked with a counselor coming out of my marriage and divorce. But because I'm a very self-led learner, I jumped in with myself. And nowadays, there is so much information like this podcast right here, this recording, where you can glean if you want to, if that works for you. And yet, because not everyone is that way, one of the things that's come out of this for me is that I've created spaces where I can connect with people who don't have access. And I'm really trying to do that in a super accessible way. So if they maybe don't have insurance, can't get a hold of a counselor, they don't necessarily know who to go to, or they don't want to leave their house, but they don't feel like they can do this on their own, that there's ways to do it. So I kind of say, I've read all the books, I've listened to all the great people, and it's one of my maybe superpowers. I love to condense down maybe the
Mhm.
songwriter in me that has to take a big message and turn it into a 3.5 minute song.
Right.
I'd love to be able to take this body of information and say, this is what can actually help you, and share it.
Yes. So can you say a little bit, breath work is something that you use quite a
Yeah.
bit, right? So what is the importance of that? Because I think, there's also this misperception as a trauma specialist myself, as a psychologist who works with trauma all the time. It isn't just about the therapy part. Yes, you do need to at
Right.
some point to maybe do some trauma processing, but there's a lot about trauma responses. When we keep
Yeah.
getting triggered with memories or places or things that remind us of that traumatic experience or series of experiences. And breath work can be really helpful in dealing with those immediate trauma responses in the moment when that fight, flight,
Right.
freeze mechanism gets activated. So, can you just say a little bit about how that has been helpful for you?
Totally. And it really had an art to it for me. I actually am now a somatic breathwork practitioner. That kind of came towards the end of my own healing when I really got into these longer breathwork sessions and started to be able to process from a place of being regulated all at the same time. And I was like, I got to learn this and be able to offer it. So I do that. And yet, the beginning of my understanding of breath work was the simple stuff of
Mm,
breathe, keep
mhm,
breathing, like how much we hold our breath or breathe up, right up into the chest. And so we're
mhm,
actually activating our sympathetic nervous system, that surprise response when we're breathing up here, breathing through our mouth. So the
mhm.
simplest things, one of the simple things I say to people if I had like a second with breath work is breathe through your nose.
Yeah.
Slow down and breathe into your belly. And
Mhm,
obviously when we're talking, we're breathing through our mouth, but 2, 3 seconds there, that can already make me shift and help me to feel better in my body. So what
yeah.
I've seen with breath work is it can be from that simple to an hour-long breath work journey, and all the pieces in between of knowing how to go with your breath when you're activated, not just calm yourself down, go into that activation, tighten with it, and then release. So you're actually moving into the trauma response, allowing your body to feel it, hold it, complete it, shake, get it out,
Mhm.
and then take that next step breath. Can I come into my parasympathetic and use my breath? And that's something every single person has with them every day, every moment of their life. How powerful is that, right?
Amazing. And what people I think don't realize is that you have these sensors in your lungs, right? That when you slow down the breathing, when you hold your breath, right,
Mhm.
between inhaling and exhaling, when you make the exhalation longer, all of these things activate those sensors in your lungs that then send a signal back up to your brain via the
Yeah.
vagus nerve, right? And back to
Yeah.
that amygdala, the fight, flight, freeze center of your brain, telling things to calm down. So we can
Yeah.
actually do things like calm the heart rate, calm that fight, flight response by doing that deeper breathing. And people just don't know. So that's why I think it's
Yes.
important for us to be giving that information.
So true. That two-way street you're talking about is so important because we're not saying that all this cognitive processing isn't good. It's fantastic. But it can only give so much of the signal down to the body, and then the body's going to re-signal up. So we want
Right.
both of those things. And we know, like from polyvagal theory, that most of the messages are coming from the body to the brain than the rather than the other way around.
Exactly. I think I remember seeing a video with Seth Porges, Stephen Porges's son, polyvagal theory guy, and he was saying 20%, 80% of the information goes down the vagus nerve to the organs, and 20% comes from the organs back up to the amygdala to the brain. So,
I think it's flipped, but I think
oh,
that's what you meant to say, right? 80% goes from the body to the brain and 20 from the brain
I
to
don't
the
know, but
body.
it's but
Yeah.
but point being, it's not one way. There's definitely a two way. Yeah.
Yes, and that the primary, the 80%, that is because that's amazing to people. They're like, "Wait, so my body is actually controlling my brain, is a stronger brain and regulator than just changing my thoughts." And yet the thoughts down are really important because
Yeah.
they're affecting the body. So
Right.
think about how one thought that can activate the body, now you've got that 80% going back up to the brain, and that is amplifying the thought, whereas you can turn that. You can turn it with a thought and calm the body, and then the body sends a more regulated signal. So we really can work with our body, which I think is a huge message to what both of us share, is that your body's actually your friend. It's trying to help you. It's
Hmm.
not the enemy. You don't have to fight it. You just need to learn to listen.
Well, it's trying to keep you safe, right? And it's trying to keep
Yes.
you alive. That's what this whole mechanism
Yes.
was designed to do. So let me ask you this, Stacey. What would you say was the hardest part of your healing process?
The beginning was actually what I would say believing myself, because I've always thought rise above, you're stronger. I had years in a religious upbringing, and that was a bit of a bypass for me too. So it was like, oh no, but I need to be this way, and I'm supposed to, and I'm not supposed to, and I should and I shouldn't. So this
Mhm.
sense of going, wait a minute, my body is actually telling me the truth, and I can listen to it. Once I was able to listen to that, and instead of trying to fix it and make it stop doing bad things, you know, and I went, "Oh, you're trying to help me here?" That was a major shift for me. It was a major difficulty, like you're saying at first, and then it was actually the key to the
Mhm.
beginning of a deeper healing.
Mhm. Yeah. And how has the experience you've been now that you've kind of come out the other side of the process, I would say,
Yeah,
right? You're in this more post-traumatic growth
right.
stage, right? How has it impacted your life to have been through all of these really
Mhm.
difficult and painful experiences?
It's changed everything, and really the biggest thing, as I say, this is life. I used to see it as like, "Oh my gosh, I need to get this thing fixed so I can go back to my good life or find it again," instead of saying now, oh, this is the story. This is the growth, living, learning, and doing that process over and over. So it has now not, it's become not just like a sideshow to what I do, but the main focus. I've brought it into my work with horses, and now the horses are bringing it back. I'm using them in my work with women as well, into my music, which my music was already doing it for me, and seeing that complementary aspect. So it's helped me to create these courses and experiences and communities with women. It's changed my relationships because I now can speak from in here whole. I'm not looking to someone else, some circumstance to change so that I'll be okay and safe. Like you said, safe is a big word for me. I have a community called Becoming Safe, and it's about becoming safe inside so that we can be safe in our relationships and in the world around us. So that would
Right.
be probably the biggest shift for me, is I really have become safe inside. And that doesn't mean that I'm always regulated or I've always got it together. But when
Right.
it happens, I go, oh, I know what's going on. And now I can choose. I have access to my choice again. And even sharing that has been that completion, being able to say, there's purpose in this, not trying to put a bypass over it, like, oh, there's something good that's come out of my trauma, but to say, this is life. We all have heart rate. That's the ups and downs and twists and turns of life. Once it goes flat, we're done. So, meanwhile, like, let's ride the ride, and we can learn to ride it with ease and with peace, even the scary parts. That is a beautiful opportunity that we get out of trauma, is we get to learn how to do that.
And what an empowering message, right? For those who
Yeah.
feel like they might be in the midst of a struggle right now. I mean, so
Yeah.
many people in the world. Any final thoughts, like, or suggestions you might make for that person who is currently going through something really traumatic or difficult?
Yeah. I think back to what I would tell myself when I was in some of the darker places, even before my trauma resurfaced. The things I was reminded of that happened would be slow down,
Mhm.
just breathe, slow down. And then you might need to make a quick decision. Sometimes our situations we're in require us to make some pretty important, huge decisions in life. So we're not minimizing it by, hey, slow down, take it easy. No, but we can slow down this process and get in time with it. There's a rhythm to life, even the fast parts. Think of music. There's the activating, like, crazy songs that we can dance to, but there's a rhythm to it. And then
Mhm.
there's those slower ones that we can sink into. So I think that would be my biggest suggestion of what they can do right there for themselves. And then find a community,
Mhm.
find someone like one of us that they can tune into, even if it's just a podcast, if they don't actually have that access. When you hear that you're not alone and you're not crazy, like, you're understanding what's going on with you, it starts to make more sense, and that alone will help the body to calm a bit.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all the wisdom you shared with us. Stacey, if
Yes.
people want to find out more about you and your work, where should they go?
Well, I would love to invite them to come to my Patreon page, which is totally free. And the reason I'm inviting them there is that they can just pop their email in and have access to all of my music, plus a somatic breathwork session that's a short one, a somatic exercise so they can taste some of that work, like what is this breath work, some of the songs that they can hear, and then I'll have their email address and then I can shoot them an email, a welcome email that can say, here's my website. You can look at all the things. I have some in-person retreats. And that's just staceyfitzgeraldmusic.com and Stacey with an E.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Stacey.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story and your experiences. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. If you know someone who needs to hear this or who would benefit from learning more about Stacey and her work and healing from trauma, the importance of breath work, and or maybe just some inspiration on how to get through a rough time, you can come out the other side. Please do share this, like it, subscribe to this channel, all the things to help us get this information out there. Thank you again. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.